So thank you everyone for joining me in the session today. I'm Karina Ramirez and I'm CCL's Diversity Outreach Manager. You're welcome to follow the slides on the link there, but you will be able to get the slides after the presentation. So buenas tardes. Again, I'm happy to join you. Normally when I begin these presentations, we go to a typical career thing presentation of what I've done in the work, but I wanted to share just a personal thing about me. So I'm a mom. That person right there next to me is my daughter. She's a 23-year-old in college. I am originally from Ecuador. I moved to the United States when I was 9 years old. And this year I celebrated my 24th year as a naturalized American. So I've lived my entire life in the United States. I used to be a dancer in my previous life, ballroom. It was something I did for fun while I was doing graduate school work. I'm a postcard collector, like you see in the back. There's just postcards from friends who travel and know that I have affinity from just experiencing the travel with them through the postcards. I take pictures of sunrises and sunsets. That's my thing. And the picture at the bottom is very dear to me because in career life, I was a former journalist. And that was the picture of me in Philadelphia. It was during the post visit when he came to United States, and I had the pleasure of covering that visit. And yeah, I was on the floor writing a story on my phone while there's millions and thousands of people around me. Very scary notion, but you know what? It happened. And it was just one of those things that I'll treasure forever. So this month, I am so happy that this is taking place throughout Hispanic Heritage Month. I am also the leader right now of the Latino Action Team. It was the first affinity group that got created inside CCL. I joined in 2017, so it's so good to see that we have a vibrant Latino community inside our organization, and we have spaces there that you can follow. CCL.Latinos is the first, it's the English-speaking Instagram page. So we decided that we're just going to celebrate and share our culture and share why we love what we do in that particular space. So again, hope that you can celebrate with us this month until October 15th. So our conversation today is going to talk about a couple of topics. We are going to talk about diversity and inclusion. We're going to talk about anti-racism and microaggressions. I'm going to share some stories from some of our chapters who are actively working on diversity work. And I'm going to give you some suggestions on what you can do to support this work. But before we get started, let me tell you just a thing that keep me up at night. My work as being your diversity outreach manager is never ending, that it just doesn't just stay in CCL. I live and experience things just like everybody else. Stories about police brutality. The killing of Breonna Taylor hit me really hard because of friends that I know and situations that happen. And sometimes you think, how can it be possible in a place that we live that someone couldn't get justice? From my own community, I used to cover immigration when I was a reporter. So to see the story come up again, and now to see that there are situations of women getting hysterectomies without their consent, something that preoccupies me at night. It was extremely painful to hear about. And, while I do this work, sometimes I go and I see the news, and sometimes I don't want to see the news. Like I say, our lives are headlines. So we talk about environmental justice all the time. I do it in my space. Is one of the conversations that continue to come up over and over again. And this is why it is so crucial to talk about the intersectionality of things. So COVID right now has killed 200,000 Americans. Communities of color, those of the ones that I work with, have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Black, Indigenous, and Latino Americans are 3 times as likely to die because of COVID. If this was not enough, we already had similar situations like this, even worse. So we were already, as a community of color, facing a lot of things that were disproportionately hurting us. In the African American community, extreme heat, for example, indigenous farming, and anything that is happening with climate change was already being impacted prior to COVID. For my community, 63% of my people are exposed to more pollution than they cause. My community, a lot of those members work in farm and construction and manufacturing, so you can imagine the extreme heat and the effect on their lives. And we also have health concerns. Members of my community are twice as likely to die from asthma. Again, also a lot of things impacted by climate change. The LGBTQ and homeless, I live in Florida. So imagine thinking that there's a hurricane coming and you may not know whether you may feel safe if you go to a shelter. These are situations that people live, and it just is impossible to not think about them in the world that we live in right now. And to top that, add climate change to those situations. So why are we focused about diversity, and why now for CCL? When I came to this work, I started as a volunteer, like everyone else. It's been 3 years with the organization. And my goal at the time when I came was just to have information in Spanish, because at that point I was coming from a work environment where people would want to share information and to tell others, to tell the reporters, I'm like, hey, we want to do outreach to your community. And my immediate question was, where's your website in Spanish? Where are your materials? So that's what happened to me when I came to CCL. So I spent the first year helping create those materials that we now use. And that was the beginning of everything. So I have to thank CCL and the volunteers for giving me my job. This is why I think it's important. Representation matters. We live in an increasingly diverse country, and in order to organize, unify, and empower communities, people need to learn how to act, I would say advocate, on each other's behalf. As you can see, we have a lot of social issues that we must handle. So why not unite on those causes and try to see what we can do together as a community? Our communities need the voices, opinions, and help of people from many different groups. As we reach out to groups, they're more likely to become involved in and give their energy to the bigger community. That's the photo of Salemi Hernandez. Salemi Hernandez, she runs the Southeast region for Citizen Climate Lobby, and she has completely just changed the way we look at our work. She definitely comes from that grassroots, community-rooted mind. There's not a person throughout Florida who doesn't know her, I like to think. But she's very much connected, and she understands how working together with other people, it is the way to do this work. Here's another reason why I do what I do. The data shows it. Although I constantly rely on data to prove a point, on this particular instance, we're just living it. My Latino community is definitely concerned, very alarmed by the situation, and we want to do something about it. It's the same thing for the Black community. So we have people that are interested in this work, and we should be able to invite them to our space and work with them in order to make what we want to do, which is to create a livable world, possible. Also, another reason to want to work with communities of color, it is necessary. This is an article by Greenpeace, and they were talking about particularly Latinos and Why reaching Latino audiences, especially those that speak in Spanish, is extremely difficult. But they were basically saying it is necessary. And they made the point during the article that something that we've heard many times before, the people that are mostly impacted are the ones that are often just not in this conversation. So why is it that has been done all this time? And we have an entire history of why that hasn't been possible. But that doesn't mean that we can't now work to correct those mistakes and build a more inclusive membership. Let's talk about being an anti-racist. I've been asked about this since I started my role in January. I am learning with you. So the information that I'm about to give you, know that I'm learning as well. I was gonna play this video for you, but for the sake of time, we're gonna play it after the presentation. I wanna make sure that I get through what I wanted to tell you. So dealing with racism is extremely difficult. It is a hard conversation to want to have with people who are not used to having them. I know as someone of color is difficult. I am having the same challenges in my community as well. I came across Scott Wood. He's a writer and a poet, and this is what he says about racism. Racism is an insidious cultural disease. It is so insidious that it doesn't care if you're a white person who likes Black people. It is going to find a way to infect how you deal with people who don't look like you. Yes, racism looks like hate, but hate is just one manifestation. Privilege is another, access is another, ignorance is another, apathy is another, and so on. So with that in mind, let's talk about what's a racist idea. I'm sure you have seen, or we have recommended in previous conversations, to read the book by Ibram Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist, because he explains it very clearly. A racist idea is any idea that suggests one racial group is inferior or superior to another racial group in any way. An anti-racist idea, by the other hand, is any idea that suggests that racial groups are equal in all their apparent differences. He makes a very interesting case for why we should all become active anti-racists. And I love that I came across Rebecca Tree's article a couple of months ago, right after the beginnings of the civil unrest that we are living. And she managed to just give you 6 points on something that is mentioned in the book. And this is what she said. Merriam-Webster defines racism as a belief that race is the primary determinant of human intrinsic capacity, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Ibram Kendi actually says this in his book. He suggests that people stop completely saying, I am not racist. We're all racist. I am racist. We have all come from many different walks of life. We have picked up things, heard things through our lives. That doesn't completely exonerate us from not having a racist thought. In the book, Kendi says racism yields racial inequities and disparities in every sector of private and public life, and that is everything: politics, healthcare, criminal justice, education, income, you name it. Being anti-racist means learning about and identifying inequities and disparities that give, in particular, white people or any racial group, material advantage over people of color. As a parent, I deal with my own racist ideas. What I've heard since I was a kid and what I've seen in my society, the kind of conversations I have with my daughter now about the beliefs that I hold, is definitely challenging. But you know what? We can all learn and we can do this together. If one believes that Black men, for example, are superior to Black women, then that person won't be able to see how certain ideas and policies disproportionately affect Black women in harmful ways. It is one way to start seeing what we have been believing about the things that we see. Ibram Kendi suggests that we should champion anti-racist ideas and policies, to look at the world around us and see how we can make it better. So I ask that you be an ally. As Princella Talley calls it, be a co-conspirator if you've been in any of her presentations. Princella Talley is the diversity coordinator with CCL. She does this work with me on a part-time basis. This is some of the things that we suggest. Support the people of color in your community. Learn to use gender neutral and gender inclusive pronouns. Provide feedback about what you're seeing. I definitely want to learn what you are talking about in your chapters, what kind of activities you're doing that deal with diversity. Continue learning and stop thinking of diversity as a side thing. And I say that often because when I started doing this work, diversity was always put in this little box of, yeah, only certain people are going to go talk about diversity. I am looking at this work organization-wide, so I'm asking you to do the same. Be aware of microaggressions. If you haven't heard of microaggressions, it means one-worded behavior that show prejudice towards a minority group. Sometimes it can be conscious. Worse, acts or environmental attacks meant to hurt someone, which is categorized as a microassault. I've never thought in my life how often I've been micro-assaulted until I started reading more about microaggressions, because I didn't think about it. I had built a defense mechanism, dealing with sarcasm, really, because I see things and hear things, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna say. So my immediate reaction is like, I'll be sarcastic about it. But here are two examples of microaggressions. So like, what are you? I received that question once. You don't speak Spanish? I heard that from even my own Latinos who somehow assume because I speak in English that I might not speak Spanish. The one that I get constantly is, what part of Mexico are you from? And I just smile and I just say, I hear Mexico is wonderful. Well, I've been to Mexico, what, a couple of years ago because of work. But prior to that, I used to do work in a business sector, and people would just, I guess that was the way to try to connect with me. So they would tell me something like that, and I would say, I hear Mexico is wonderful, but I haven't had an opportunity to visit. And then that way I would change the conversation, try to make it positive so that they don't feel as bad. So there's a list of checklist behaviors when we think about things that we would want people to do. And I'm going to go through it rather fast because I'm seeing that it's 5:52 and I'm trying to get to a certain area that I want to show you. Inclusive behavior, if you want to build community in your chapter, show genuine concern for people and the team members. Make an effort to understand people's problems. Inclusive behaviors, interrupting someone when they're speaking, not acknowledging their ideas, assuming that you're the only one to have the correct idea. Diversity at CCL right now. We have work to do. Demographics by age has been getting better. We are getting younger people, but the majority of our members happen to be older, in their 50s and 60s, but we're working on it. Our political affiliation is also, we're highly Democrat, and we're working to get the independents and the Republicans to come to our organization. We want to be bipartisan. We need everybody. And this is our race right now. Again, something that we're working to improving. We're getting better, at least in the last 2 years, but we have a way to go to reach that 40% people of color national average that we see in other organizations. Highlight of some of the things that I have seen. I would say this, that when people are doing this work, they're being their authentic self. If you don't do it authentically, just don't do it. My work involves around diversity, equity, and inclusion. You heard these terms before. Diversity is just pertaining to people. Equity, meaning what are you going to do to help the people that have been disadvantaged in your communities. And inclusion, creating a space where people from diverse backgrounds can be and feel welcome and are able to fully participate. I am saying we are starting with diversity and inclusion, and we will work on equity. We wrote a diversity value earlier last year, and we amended it in February because someone said, you have not included socioeconomic factors. You should include socioeconomic factors, and we did. And this is something that our volunteers see, and they point out to me, and I said, yeah, please tell me what is not there. But the idea is to be as diverse as possible, as well as political views. We're thinking of race, ethnicity, nationality, and all of the other terms that you normally see out there. We established 6 goals, and these goals is looking at every single piece of our organization, from the board members to what does their education look like? What is the recruitment and retention of our members? What does the volunteer leadership look like? Staff, what is our method of hiring right now, and how can that change in order for us to be more diverse and more inclusive? This year, because I needed some assistance, this work is extremely difficult and hard, I decided to just create a new position. So there's something called the community reps. If you haven't heard of them, these are my champions. These are people that were recommended by they're either been recommended to me by other CCLers or their regional leaders. I have 4 of them. Actually 5 of them covering 4 regions. I am looking for one for the Mountain West region. Basically, they are listening to what is happening in the chapters. They're bringing to me the concerns of the chapters, and they're helping me create materials that we need, like training, anti-racism training that I'm already working on with their help. I am grateful because this is the kind of work that I can't do by myself. How does DEI look across CCL? When I asked people about this, this is what they said. They're building belonging, they're holding space for communities, they are constantly believing the people of color that are walking through their doors, and they're participating in countercultural spaces. Arkansas, if you haven't heard, Shelley has done a tremendous job in that area, trying to build community and inclusion. It's been a couple of years for her, but basically she says, you know, we reached out, we respect, we make room and encourage leadership and make friends, and are immensely enriched by the knowledge, experience, and intelligence of our friends who are the people of the global majority. They have been working actively to ensure that the people that participate in that chapter go to our conferences when we could travel. We haven't been able to travel this year because of COVID, but they have leadership now that are people of color in Arkansas, in certain portions of Arkansas. And she's working to help diversify. You can do this in your community too. Louisiana, Francella Talley, she's been with CCL trying to create a space where people feel absolutely comfortable. And they are the people literally in charge. She says, I want everyone to think of it in an innovative way, not be afraid to take risks, and reduce their defensiveness so that they can make sound decisions together. But none of these things can happen if they don't have a strong sense of psychological safety. Psychological safety, in an essence, is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with their ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. If you have an opportunity to go to a climate and culture action team meeting, please do. I think once you get to experience what community is like in that action team, you'll be able to understand that fully. Other areas where people are working on DEI, Virginia created a team last year. They started with film and books and reading events, and they're now developing a plan of action to include DEI into the 5 levers of political will. The Pacific Northwest created a team earlier this year, and their entire purpose was to just look at how they were communicating with their members of Congress, to look at how they can best answer questions when it came to that, when they met with the progressive members of Congress. Everybody's working on diversity in a completely different way, depending on their regions and the need of their regions. This is all volunteer-led. This is not me telling them, you have to do this. They all came to me and they started telling me, hey, I have this idea of what we want to try. And all I can say, I'm like, I'm here to support you. Tell me what you need. Other ways people are working on diversity is inside the action teams. The Catholic Action Team created a subgroup because they wanted to do outreach to Latinos, and they came to me and they had created an entire presentation that's available now in Spanish that talks about why Catholics should join CCL. It's amazing to see. The affinity groups also are working on diversity topics. There's 6 of them. When I look at the fact that there's 6 of them, I can't get over myself. Over there on the left, the Latinos Action Team was 2 people. And now we're about 10 to 15, depending on the people that show up on the call. The last 3 this year, the LGBTQIA plus allies, Asian Pacific, and the Amplifying Indigenous Voices Action Team, all created this year. They all work on different topics, but the purpose of this is to have a community where people of color and indigenous descent can have a space in CCL and feel that they are heard and that they can be part of our community. It's amazing to see this work. So next steps. I'm gonna take a breather. That's gonna be me tomorrow morning. I'm gonna go and see my sunrise again. Because this is just a lot of work that is taking place, but this is what's happening right now. So nationally, we have a DEI committee. There is a plan that CCL put together. It has 30 actionable items. I kid you not, it looks like so much work. But this committee is gonna help all of us make sure that we are following what we told ourselves we wanted to do last year. From now until the end of the year, I'm going to focus on volunteer training, particularly the anti-racism training, because it's the #1 thing that I have been asked throughout the organization to put together. I am seeking more community reps. So if you're interested, email me and we can talk. And I'm going to continue to develop systems focused on inclusion and diversity and accountability. What you can do: start and continue your self-education. Create your own diversity and inclusion team. If you see something, say something. I am not all-knowing. I don't know absolutely everything related to DEI, but we can talk and you can tell me what are your challenges and we can find solutions together. Accept that we will make mistakes. We're gonna learn and we're gonna move on. We all make mistakes. I make them. I can, I won't be sitting here going, that person said this. It's okay, we're human. But the thing is that we had decided and taken upon ourselves that we want to be better humans, for the lack of a better term. And we're gonna work on this together. Continue to ask questions. There's never a wrong or a dumb question. And hold me accountable. And by that, I mean, that's a lot of work that is being done. I am sure at some point I will forget what I committed myself to. So I am tasking you to just send me an email and be like, hey, where are we on this program that you said during that presentation at that time? Let me know, because I am sure at some point I will drop the ball. But because we're CCLers, we have each other's back. So I trust that you will support me. Other sources for self-education. I wanted to share that video with you on building diversity builds a more resilient environmental movement. I think Charles explains our work in a way that will make you understand why we do what we do. Also, I want you to go and learn about intersectional environmentalism. I didn't discuss that here, but it's the frame of thought that everything is related. And how can we work together in order to find the solution when we have not only climate change to try to correct, if that's the right word, and how do we deal with our social issues? And is it possible to do both? Yes. Things that you can do. I spent some weekends watching movies and learning. The 13th had me in tears. Highly recommend that one because it's so true. So you can learn through films, you can learn through books, you can learn through radio shows. Code Switch by NPR is a show that I personally listen to because it just provides stories from a different point of view from people of color. And it's just a good reference to have it out there. Other things that you can do, there are 3 presentations at the bottom. One of them with Princella Talley and talking about diverse and inclusive chapters. The environmental justice part of community that deals, the EJ team has done a great job in putting just definitions and concepts that you should understand. And Clara Fan, a fabulous presentation on diversity in the climate movement and the history of where we started and where we are right now. There's a list of action teams that I created. And those action teams, by the way, are the ones that I personally volunteer and work with, including higher education and conservatives, because I like to know what people are doing. There's a guide that deals with diversity for the month of September. My intention is to have one every month. And of course, Hispanic heritage, one in English and one in Spanish. 12 things that you can do to support Hispanic heritage in your area.
Karina?
So yes.
Our time is just about up. We have about just a few minutes for questions. Te agradezco muchísimo. Thank you so much.
So,
go ahead.
This is the final thought. This person, Jose Rivas, went over to Standing Rock and documented everything that happened for 7 months when he did this a couple of years ago. There's a section in Just Magazine called the decolonization issue. And he was talking about how you can find your inner peace while working on your reconciliation. Decolonization starts inside you. It is a lot about finding compassion and kindness and less about anger and fear. We should remember that it begins with an internal process of healing and reconciliation. Once we find that peace, then we will be able to move forward and unify as people. We must remember that we are all related. He called his work not just what he was seeing, not just a protest, but an awakening. So I'm going to tell you, think of our work as an awakening. I think about how everything is related. I believe we must acknowledge our history, work on our own reconciliation, and take the necessary steps to move forward. And with that, I conclude. So we have a couple of seconds for questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the first question is, when you say support BIPOC or BIPOC in English in our community, can you give specific examples?
So here are things that I have personally done. I have gone and volunteered at centers and places that need my assistance. So if you find a community center in your town that needs help, maybe it's, volunteering 1 hour a week, but supporting other people's programs and causes. There's a lot happening out there that needs your support. When people have done this work, they don't go in and particularly talking about carbon fee and dividend. We don't do that, but we go and learn about what the community is going through. I've gone to meetings at the NAACP just to learn. I've maybe had 1 or 2 discussions with a couple of people, but this kind of work takes time. So when I say support what is happening in your community around you. And even if, that's the only way that we can learn what is happening and how we can help each other.
Great. Someone asks, can you say what BIPOC stands for again?
So Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. There are different acronyms out there, but that is the one that is commonly used right now.
Great. There's a question from someone that it looks like you may have met, and this is from a Native American in Montana, I think. It says, are there chapters in states like Montana, which is mostly white, that are doing diversity work that I could contact to get ideas to work in Montana?
Oh, I have not heard. And this is the other thing. Like, I have been personally asking people if they know of any work to let me know. So I know the Pacific Northwest started doing this work, and I know that Virginia was doing this work. The DC chapter is doing some diversity work. There's a chapter in California, the Santa Rosa area, doing diversity work. So if I find one in Montana, I will let you know. But if you find out before me, let me know, because the idea is to learn what people are doing and also try to come up with best practices so that we can share that with each other. I don't think that we should recreate the wheel if someone has found something that works for them.
Karina, I'll just add, this is Sean, the Indigenous Action Team, I think, is pulling people from all over. So there might be some folks from Montana in that group. So it might be a place to look.
Yeah, that action is not an action team right now. So that Indigenous team is right now working on doing the outreach to the more than 100 members that have self-identified as Native American and Indigenous inside CCL. Right now we have one cultural consultant and one member from Hawaii, I believe. But I'm continuing to go to those meetings just to kind of learn to see what we're going to come up with. But the idea is to make that team with the participants in mind so that they can run it and have their space.
Very good. Karina, this is Don. I'm the ghost host for this session, and I want to express our grateful appreciation for the sensitivity and the insight that you shared with us this afternoon. Just super excellent. And I think you may have discussed a means by which you can show the video that you've got lined up. And do you want to do that? And we will.
Do I have time?
Well, we don't have
time. It's only 5 minutes.
Officially. So my official responsibility is to say we're closed and everyone can move forward. However, for those who want to see the video, I think you can make that available, and I'd appreciate it if you could show it. So
wonderful. All right. So let me see how I can pull it up. Hopefully it will work. Oh my, yes. Okay.
Last night, I told you a story about an encounter I had with the police. Now let me tell you another story. One time, a few years ago, I was living in Amsterdam, and I flew to Chicago for the weekend to visit some friends who lived there. When I got there, my friend Jeff and I hopped in his car and headed out to pick up our friend Krasny, who just so happened to live next to the alley behind the police station. So Jeff parks his car at the gas station at the end of the alley so that I can run out, go pick up Krasny, and take her back to the car. I'm freaking thrilled. I haven't seen her in years. So we were all going to go have dinner and catch up. Now, I get out of the car and go down the alley, and because Jeff is watching me, I skip down the alley to her house to make him laugh, you know. But little did I know, skipping down a police station alley is a big no-no, because I end up skipping towards a cop car that's driving at me down the alley. The sirens go off, a cop gets out and his gun is drawn, and he goes, "Put your hands on the hood of the car! Put your hands on the hood!" This man is furious. I comply, and his partner pats me down. Now this man is livid. It makes no sense. His anger level towards me is insane. I'm a young, adorable delight, literally skipping down the street, and I've infuriated him. So this man asked me, "Where are you coming from?" And I go, "Amsterdam." Now this answer enrages him. And he goes, "No, where are you coming from right now? Where are you coming from?" And I go, "From the airport, from a flight from Amsterdam." And he goes, "Why in the world are you running down this alley?" I go, "I'm not running, I'm skipping. I'm happy to be back in town. I'm going to pick up my friend Krasny and take her back to Jeff's car, and we're all going to go catch up over dinner." And I remember, oh, thank God, Jeff is here. I gesture back to Jeff. Jeff is standing outside of his car, just watching all of this. And he goes, so the cop and I see Jeff, and thank God Jeff didn't come running up to us, because he could have gotten us both shot. But the cop sees that Jeff, a white man, has seen all of this, and he changes his attitude with the quickness. He's suddenly professional instead of antagonistic. And he tells me that I was wrong for running. And it takes everything in me not to tell him that if I wanted to run down the alley, that would be perfectly legal. So instead, I also gently remind him that I was not running, I was skipping. So the cop gets in his car and he leaves. And I walk to Krasny's house. I get her. We take her back to the car. Jeff is really bothered by what happens, but I'm not. That man could have shot me in a second. People who know me would be running around talking about attacking an officer. Doesn't seem like something Amber would do, but the officer said she did. So that has to be what happened. So the second I see Krasny, I feel a lot better. And we go and we have a lot of fun that night. And if you think about it, it's kind of my duty to have fun. Because at any time, I could get murdered by the police. Now, every Black person I know has stories like that. It's crazy that people don't run around telling everyone these stories all the time, but there's this unspoken rule that Black people are supposed to take it in stride. Can you imagine having someone pull a gun on you and being expected to take it in stride? Now imagine a bunch of incidents like that over one lifetime. Multiply that by 43 million African Americans. And that is why things are like this right now. That is why people are angry. And if you're not angry, why not?
Thank you.
So-
You want to close with some comments?
Yeah. So Amber Ruffin is a comedian. She is one of the head writers for Seth Meyers. And that week, to put it in content, it was the middle of summer, June 2nd, and George Floyd she started the conversation, and so she spent the whole week telling stories about her Black experience. And I thought that for the purpose of what I was trying to get across, it's better to hear from the person affected. Like, I experienced racism, but not at the level of how my African-American friends experience racism. So I wanted people to understand that this is something that they live, and you can't wake up in the morning and get rid of your skin color. And you don't know who you're gonna come across and what they're gonna say. So it's hard to be who you are in a country that doesn't want you because you look in a certain way or speak a certain language. And I wanted to make sure that we all understood that this is what happened. So that's all I wanted to say.
Karina, thank you again for sharing those insights. Much appreciated. I note that we have our director of the conference who's with us still, Sean Newell. And Sean, I'm going to turn to you and ask if you'd just like to offer a few words of appreciation to everyone for their attendance, or perhaps officially close us down.
Well, I'm delighted to do so and let you all get back to your other lives. And I hope you leave inspired, as I am, and enthusiastic about what's coming. And I thank Karina for helping bring us as an organization forward in such a kind and gentle way. And we all do make mistakes. We make them all the time. And for us to just be kind and learn from them is a pretty good lesson to leave on. So I thank you all. I wish you could have been in Flagstaff. Safe trip home or safe trip outside, whatever. And thanks so much. Really appreciate you all.
Thanks,
We're
all.
blessed, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you so much.